I hadn't spoken to my family in 3 years when the email arrived. It was from my mother. The message was brief. Your brother has something important to share. Everyone will be there. 6 p.m. sharp. Don't embarrass us by not showing up. I stared at my laptop screen in my corner office on the 47th floor. Through the window, San Francisco Bay sparkled in the afternoon sun. My assistant knocked softly before entering. Miss Chen, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. I nodded, closing the email. Whatever my family wanted could wait. I had a $180 million company to run. My brother Marcus and I used to be close. Growing up, we were only 2 years apart. Him at 32 now, me at 30. But somewhere along the way our paths diverged dramatically. Marcus became everything my parents wanted. Corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm, married to a doctor, living in our hometown of Seattle. He wore expensive suits, drove a Tesla, and never missed a family gathering. I became everything they feared. The daughter who threw away her law school acceptance to build a tech startup in San Francisco. The one who worked 80-hour weeks in a cramped apartment. The one who chose equity over salary, risk over security. You're making a huge mistake, my father had shouted when I told them about my startup. You have a full scholarship to Harvard Law. Do you know how many people would kill for that opportunity? I'm building something, Dad. Something that matters. You're building nothing, Marcus had sneered. You'll be bankrupt in 6 months, crawling back here begging for help. That was 3 years ago. They didn't know that 6 months after that conversation we secured series of funding. They didn't know that a year later Fortune featured us as one of the fastest growing AI companies in the country. They didn't know that 2 years in we had 340 employees and contracts with Fortune 500 companies. They didn't know because I never told them. After that dinner, after the shouting and the mockery and my mother crying about wasted potential, I made a decision. I cut them off completely. No calls. No emails. No social media updates. I blocked their numbers, moved apartments without sharing my address, and built my life without them in it. For 3 years I heard nothing. And honestly, I was happier than I'd ever been. Until that email. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that my silence had driven my brother insane. Marcus had spent 3 years telling everyone I'd failed. That I was probably homeless. That I was too ashamed to admit he'd been right all along. He'd built an entire narrative around my absence, and the family had believed every word. But doubt crept in. Mutual acquaintances would mention seeing someone who looked like me in Forbes. A cousin claimed she'd found my company online. Each piece of contradictory evidence made Marcus more desperate to prove his story. So 6 months ago he made a decision. He hired a private investigator. Not just any PI. Marcus went to Thompson & Associates, one of the most prestigious investigation firms in Seattle. Former FBI agents, corporate fraud specialists, people who charged $250 per hour. I need a complete background check, Marcus told them, sliding a check across the desk. My sister. I need to know everything, where she lives, where she works, her financial status. Everything. The retainer was $15,000. I want the report delivered at Christmas dinner, Marcus specified. In front of the whole family. I want it read aloud. The lead investigator, a 28-year veteran named Robert Chin, no relation, took the case with one condition. We investigate thoroughly, Mr. Hayes. That means if we find information you don't like, it goes in the report. And per our ethical guidelines, if we're investigating one family member at the request of another, we conduct due diligence on both parties. Standard procedure to avoid liability. Marcus, confident and smug, had agreed immediately. Investigate away. I have nothing to hide. That was his first mistake. I almost didn't go. The email had been followed by texts from my mother, voicemails from my aunt, even a message from my grandmother. Please come, sweetheart. It's Christmas. Family should be together. My CO Jennifer found me staring at my phone on Christmas Eve. Everything okay, boss? I told her about the situation. Jennifer, who'd been with me since our 2-person startup days, shook her head. You know what I think? Go. You've got nothing to prove to them, but maybe it's time they saw who you really are. They won't care, Jen. They've already decided who I am in their minds. Then let them see they were wrong. She smiled. Besides, watching their faces when they realize you're successful, that's the best Christmas gift you could give yourself. So I went. I dressed simply, Black cashmere sweater, designer jeans, minimal jewelry. My Tesla Model S, the plaid version because why not, hummed quietly as I drove north to Seattle. 3 hours of highway gave me plenty of time to mentally prepare. Stay calm. Stay quiet. Don't engage. I repeated it like a mantra. My parents' house looked exactly the same. Christmas lights on the porch, wreath on the door, the scent of pine and cinnamon in the air. I rang the doorbell. My mother opened it, her face cycling through shock, relief, and something almost like anger. You came. You said it was mandatory. She stepped aside without hugging me. The house was full, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. At least 30 people crowded into the living room and dining room. Christmas music played softly in the background. Everyone stopped talking when I walked in. Well, Marcus emerged from the kitchen, champagne flute in hand. The prodigal daughter returns. He looked good. Expensive suit even for a family dinner, perfectly styled hair, that same smug smile I remembered. Marcus. That's all you have to say? After 3 years of hiding. I didn't respond. I found a chair in the corner as far from everyone as possible. The whispers started immediately. Is that really her? She looks different. I heard she's been living in her car. Marcus said she's probably on welfare. I pulled out my phone and answered emails. My company didn't stop for Christmas and neither did I. Dinner was awkward. I sat at the far end of the table barely speaking. My grandmother kept trying to make conversation but I gave short, polite answers. Everyone else talked around me, occasionally throwing glances my way. Marcus held court at the other end, entertaining everyone with stories from his law firm, vacation photos from Bali, plans for a new house. Then, as dessert was being served, he stood up. Everyone, I have an announcement. The room fell silent. He tapped his champagne flute with a fork. As you all know, my dear sister has been absent for 3 years. No calls, no visits, no explanation. She cut us off completely. Heads turned toward me. I kept my expression neutral. Now she's claimed, when she bothered to tell anyone anything, that she was building a company in San Francisco. That she was doing well. He made air quotes and several people chuckled. But none of us have seen any evidence of this so-called success. No LinkedIn profile, no Facebook updates, nothing. So I decided to get to the truth. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. 6 months ago, I hired Thompson and Associates, one of the best investigation firms in the country, to conduct a thorough background check on my sister. My mother gasped. Several people pulled out their phones ready to record. I paid $15,000 for a complete investigation. 60 days of work. Former FBI agents. The whole 9 yards. He was beaming now, absolutely glowing with confidence. The investigator will expose your lies today, he announced smugly, looking directly at me. The whole family gathered, champagne ready. I stayed quiet. My heart was pounding but I kept my face completely neutral. Whatever he thought he'd found, I had nothing to hide. The doorbell rang. That'll be him now, Marcus announced. Everyone, please welcome Robert Chin, lead investigator from Thompson and Associates. Robert Chin was exactly what you'd expect from a former FBI agent. Early 60s, silver hair, immaculate suit, and an air of absolute authority. He carried a leather briefcase and surveyed the room with the practiced eye of someone who'd interviewed criminals and witnesses for 3 decades. Mr. Hayes, he nodded at Marcus. Mr. Chin. Come in, come in. Can we get you some coffee? Wine? Water is fine, thank you. His voice was measured, professional. Marcus practically skipped to get him a chair at the head of the table. The investigator sat, placed his briefcase on the table and pulled out 2 manila envelopes. Ew. I noticed that immediately. Marcus didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert began, I was retained by Mr. Marcus Hayes 6 months ago to conduct a comprehensive background investigation into his sister, Ms. Sarah Hayes. The investigation lasted 60 days and included financial records, employment verification, property searches, criminal background checks, and witness interviews. He paused, looking around the room. However, I must note something for the record. At Thompson and Associates, we have strict ethical guidelines. When investigating one family member at the request of another, particularly in situations that might involve estate disputes, custody battles, or other legal matters, we conduct reciprocal due diligence on both parties. This protects us from liability and ensures our reports are comprehensive and impartial. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. What do you mean, both parties? I mean, Mr. Hayes, that as part of our standard protocol, we also conducted a background check on you. To verify the source of the investigation funds, to ensure this wasn't part of a fraud scheme, and to maintain our ethical standards. That's fine. I have nothing to hide. Excellent. Robert opened the first envelope. Then let's begin. Robert pulled out a thick document, at least 40 pages, bound with a black cover. The room was completely silent except for the soft crackling of the fireplace. The pie stood up. I investigated both parties as required. He cleared his throat and began reading from the first page. Subject A, Sarah Michelle Hayes, age 30. He looked at me. I met his eyes calmly. Current residence. Penthouse apartment, Millennium Tower, San Francisco, California. Monthly rent, $12,000. Lease verified. My mother's fork clattered to her plate. Current employment. Founder and Chief Executive Officer, NextGen AI Solutions, incorporated in California 3 years ago. Marcus's smile was completely gone now. Company status. Private C Corporation with 342 full-time employees across 3 offices, San Francisco, New York, and Austin. Annual revenue for fiscal year 2025. $180 million. Verified through corporate filings, bank statements, and contracts with Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and 15 other Fortune 500 companies. That can't be. My father started. Robert continued, his voice steady. Subject holds 68% equity in the company, valued by our financial analysts at approximately $380 million based on comparable companies and recent venture capital offers. Company has raised $95 million across 3 funding rounds from Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, and Kleiner Perkins. He flipped a page. Notable achievements. Featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 2024. TechCrunch Founder of the Year 2025. Keynote speaker at Web Summit CS and South by Southwest. 3 patents pending for AI-driven data analysis systems. The room was dead silent. Personal assets. 2024 Tesla Model S Plaid, paid in full. Investment portfolio with Fidelity valued at $4.2 million. No debt. Credit score. 820. Clean background. No criminal record. No civil judgments. No liens. No bankruptcies. He closed the first report. CEO of a $180 million tech company, clean background. Every face in the room had turned toward me. My grandmother's eyes were filled with tears. My mother looked like she might faint. My father's face was completely white. Marcus stood frozen, his champagne flute dangling from his hand. I don't. He stammered. There's more, Robert said quietly. Robert placed the first envelope aside and picked up the second one. This envelope was thicker. Subject B. He turned to face Marcus directly. Mr. Marcus Daniel Hayes, age 32. Wait, Marcus said, his voice suddenly sharp. What are you doing? As I explained, Mr. Hayes, our protocol requires reciprocal investigation. You signed our standard contract agreeing to this. But I'm not the one being investigated. You retained our services and provided $15,000 in investigation fees. Standard anti-money laundering protocols required us to verify the source of those funds and ensure our client wasn't engaging in any activities that might create liability for our firm. Robert opened the second envelope. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Mr. Hayes is employed as senior associate at Morrison, Fletcher & Bryant, LLP, with an annual salary of $185,000. He has been with the firm for 6 years. His employment file shows strong performance reviews. Marcus relaxed slightly. See? I told you. However, Robert's voice cut through. Our financial investigation revealed several irregularities. Between January 2024 and November 2025, we documented 47 unauthorized wire transfers from the firm's client trust accounts to personal accounts controlled by Mr. Hayes. The room exploded in gasps. That's a lie. Marcus shouted. Robert continued, unmoved. Unauthorized wire transfers totaling $210,000 from employer accounts, documented timestamps. He pulled out spreadsheets, bank statements, transfer records. The transfers were made in amounts ranging from $2,500 to $8,900, always kept below the $10,000 threshold that would trigger automatic bank reporting to federal authorities. The money was moved through 3 intermediary accounts before being deposited into Mr. Hayes' personal account at Wells Fargo, account ending in 4729. You can't prove. Each transfer has a timestamp. Each occurred during hours when Mr. Hayes had access to the firm's banking system. The IP addresses match Mr. Hayes' work computer. Furthermore, 3 transfers were made from his home IP address during evening hours when he would have been using the firm's VPN. Robert laid out page after page of evidence on the table. Bank statements, transfer records, IP logs, screenshots. The total amount embezzled is $210,847 across the 22-month period. The money was used to fund home renovations, luxury purchases, and the $15,000 retainer paid to our firm, which is how we discovered the irregularity in the first place. My brother's face had gone from white to gray. He grabbed the edge of the table for support. When we discovered this during our routine financial background check, we were legally obligated to notify the authorities. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit was contacted 3 days ago. They've been building their case since then. FBI, my mother whispered. Wire fraud is a federal crime, Mrs. Hayes. Particularly when it involves attorney trust accounts, which are heavily regulated. Marcus's wife, Dr. Amanda Hayes, stood up slowly. Marcus? What is he talking about? I can explain. Can you? Robert's voice was cold now. Because our investigators also discovered that you used $43,000 of the embezzled funds as a down payment on your house. That's money that belonged to the firm's clients. Money that was supposed to be held in trust. What happened next was chaos. Marcus's phone rang. He pulled it out with shaking hands, looked at the caller ID, and his face went even paler. It's Henry Morrison, the senior partner. You should answer it, Robert said calmly. Though I suspect he's calling about the same report we sent to the firm's ethics committee yesterday. My brother's lawyer was already dialing. Marcus answered. We could all hear the shouting from across the room. What the hell have you done? The FBI is in our office right now with a warrant. They're seizing your computer, your files, everything. Marcus dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, Henry Morrison's voice still shouting from the speaker. Amanda stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. How could you? We have a mortgage, Marcus. We have a baby coming. How could you steal from your own firm? I was going to pay it back, he whispered. We needed the money for the house, for the furniture, for everything you wanted. So you committed fraud? My father found his voice. Robert, Mr. Chin, there must be some mistake. My son would never. There's no mistake, sir. We've documented everything. Furthermore, during our investigation, we discovered that Mr. Hayes had been telling colleagues, friends, and family members that his sister was homeless and possibly involved in criminal activity. This despite having no evidence to support those claims. In legal terms, that constitutes defamation. He pulled out another document. Ms. Hayes, our firm specializes in corporate investigations, but we also have strong relationships with defamation attorneys. If you choose to pursue legal action against your brother for damaging your reputation and business relationships, I have 3 firms who would be interested in taking your case. I hadn't said a single word since the investigator arrived. Now everyone turned to look at me. Sarah, my mother's voice was pleading. Sweetheart, we didn't know. We believed Marcus when he said I was a failure? My voice was calm, controlled. When he said I was homeless. When he said I'd thrown my life away. Silence. For 3 years you all believed him. You didn't reach out. You didn't check. You just accepted his story because it was easier than admitting you were wrong about my choices. I stood up, gathering my things. I built a company worth $180 million. I employ over 300 people. I've changed lives, created jobs, developed technology that's being used by major corporations around the world. And not once, did any of you think to check if Marcus's story was true. My grandmother was crying openly now. Sarah, please. I came here today because you said it was mandatory. Because after 3 years of silence you demanded I show up. And I did. I came, I stayed quiet, and I let Marcus's investigator tell you exactly who I really am. I walked toward the door. Wait, my father called. We need to talk about this. We need to figure this out. Figure out what, Dad? That your son is a criminal? That your daughter is successful? Both of those things are facts now. The FBI is handling one. I've been handling the other for 3 years without you. I looked at Marcus, who had collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. You spent $15,000 to prove I was a fraud. Instead, you proved you were the criminal in this family. I hope it was worth it. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Texts from cousins, aunts, my grandmother. I ignored them all and started the drive back to San Francisco. Robert Chen called as I merged onto the highway. Ms. Hayes, I wanted to reach out personally. I apologize for the dramatic nature of this evening. Don't apologize. You did your job. I want you to know, when we discovered your brother's activities, we debated whether to include them in the Christmas dinner report or handle it privately. But given that he specifically requested a public reading, and given the defamatory statements he'd been making about you, you gave him exactly what he asked for. Precisely. Also, I meant what I said about the defamation attorneys. What your brother did, spreading lies about your business, your character, your success, that's caused real damage. Potential investors who heard those stories, business contacts, professional relationships. I'll think about it. One more thing. Your company, NextGen AI Solutions. My daughter is a computer science major at Stanford. Would you be open to speaking to her class about entrepreneurship? I smiled for the first time all day. Email my assistant. We have a whole program for that. The news broke 3 days later. Seattle attorney arrested on wire fraud charges. Marcus's face was all over the local news, being walked out of his office in handcuffs. The FBI had seized $147,000 from his accounts. Everything they could trace directly to the embezzled funds. Morrison, Fletcher and Bryant immediately fired him and filed a civil suit for the remaining $63,000 plus damages. The Washington State Bar Association opened an investigation into his conduct. Amanda filed for divorce 2 weeks later. My parents tried to reach out. Letters, emails, even showing up at my office building, security didn't let them pass the lobby. Each message was some variation of "we're sorry," and "we didn't know," and "please forgive us." I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was angry, though I had every right to be, but because their apologies weren't about me. They were about their own guilt, their own shame, their own need to feel better about the choices they'd made. They'd spent 3 years believing I was nothing. They'd spent 3 years supporting Marcus's lies. They'd spent 3 years not even wondering if maybe, just maybe, I was actually doing well. You don't get to erase 3 years of dismissal with a few apologies. My company closed a Series C funding round in June. $150 million led by Sequoia Capital. Our valuation hit $800 million. Forbes called it one of the most impressive growth stories in Silicon Valley. The article included a photo of me in our new headquarters, standing in front of a wall displaying our company values. The first value in huge letters: believe in yourself even when others don't. Jennifer framed the article and hung it in my office. You know, she said, your family's going to see this. I know. Does that bother you? I thought about Christmas dinner. About Marcus's smug face. About the investigators' 2 reports. About walking out of that house with my head high. No, I said. It doesn't bother me at all. Because here's what I learned. You don't need your family's approval to be successful. You don't need them to believe in you. You don't need them to understand your choices. You just need to believe in yourself. Everything else, that's just noise. And as for Marcus, the last I heard, he'd plea bargained down to 3 years in federal prison plus restitution. His law license was permanently revoked. His marriage was over. His reputation was destroyed. He'd spent $15,000 in 60 days trying to prove I was a fraud. Instead, he proved he was a criminal. The irony isn't lost on me. But then again, that's what happens when you hire an investigator who actually does their job. They find the truth. All of it. Even the parts you didn't want anyone to know.